Hey, what's up everyone? Ralph here. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you can save money on a low income, right? Because unless you come from a wealthy family, we've all been at a point in our life where we weren't able to save money because we didn't make enough money. So that's why in this video, I'm going to share with you some tips on how you can navigate through that and come up with some ways to be able to, get to a point where you can save money, even if your income is low. So if you're struggling with saving money and because for whatever reason, then you definitely want to watch this video. So let's start with the first reason. The first thing you want to do, right, is you want to be real about your situation, right? Because I think for a lot of people, when we're dealing through pain or we're going through some type of struggle, we don't want to face the realization of what we're going through, right? So we try to avoid it. So we just say, you know what, that problem is, I'm not going to worry about that problem right now. You try to find different ways to distract yourself from the issue at hand. But in reality, you really can't, just avoid that situation. You can't stop. You can't just ignore it, right? Because every time you got to pay a bill, every time an emergency comes up, every time you look at your bank account, the reality hits you in your face, and it just gets to that point where you're defeated. So the first thing you gotta do is just be real about your situation and don't ignore it. You gotta figure out, you gotta face that situation head on and say, all right, what do I need to do? All right, so this is clearly a problem. So what things do I need to do in order to change this situation? Which leads to my next point, which is you have to develop a solutions based mindset, right? And that's the most important thing, developing that mindset and saying, all right, you know what? I have to figure out this problem. And I think for a lot of people, when we're going through a situation, especially when we're trying to save, when we don't make enough money, we come up with a whole bunch of excuses, right? The first thing we do is I can't save money because, I don't make enough money, or I can't do this because I gotta buy things for the kids, or I can't, save money because of, for whatever reason. We always come up with reasons, and it always starts with I can't, right? And when we say I can't, it automatically shuts off the brain from coming up with any solutions. So instead of saying I can't, you need to switch that mindset and start asking yourself, how can I, right? Because once you start asking yourself that question, how can I, then your brain starts to say, all right, what kind of solutions can I come up to this problem? Because you gotta come up with a solution. You gotta figure out a way. You can't just have this defeatist mindset and say, there's no solution. I can't do this for XYZ reason. You have to figure it out, because that problem is always gonna be there every day when you wake up. So instead of saying I can't, say how can I, and say, all right, I need to come up with solutions. What can I do in order to change my circumstance, right? Because in reality, if you're working right now, right, you got some income coming in. All you have to do is start with $1, right? And I know $1 doesn't sound like much, but if you can't save $1 from your paycheck, then how you gonna be able to save $100, $5, $10,000, $100? If you can just start with $1, I don't care if you got to put in a cookie jar or whatever under your mattress. Start with $1, whatever. Every time you get a paycheck, start with $1, right? Then that dollar eventually becomes $5. $5 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, and so on and so on. Because you want to it's not even about the money, it's about developing a habit, right? Developing a habit, even if it's $1 every time you get a paycheck, it's about developing a habit. Because once you get to a point where it becomes normal to you, then you're gonna be like, you know what, $1 is not enough. $5 is not enough. $10 is not enough. You're gonna start trying to figure out ways. All right, how can I save $100? All right, $200, whatever that number is. You're gonna start trying to figure out ways to save more money, because you develop that habit, and it comes to a point where it's normal to you. So you want to start off, even if it's $1, 50 cents, whatever the number is. Just start with that off, and then just put that aside, and just develop that habit of saving, regardless of how much money you make, because that's where it starts. And once you started to develop that habit of saving, right, the next thing you want to do is this: control your spending, right? So let me share with you a quick little story about how I was in a situation where I was struggling to save money on a low income. So back in 2014, I had a condo, right? And I sold my eventually. I've been trying to sell that condo for a while now, and eventually sold it in 2014. And I sold it at a loss. It was like $20,000 loss. I took out credit cards and personal loans in order to cover that loss. So right off that, once I sold that property, I was already starting off in debt. But I was in my mind, I was like, you know what? Don't worry, I got my job, so I'll be able to pay that $20,000 off, by the end of the year, or within a year or two. And that was my mind. That was my thinking. It was the wrong decision. But so 2014, I sold my place at a loss. And then 2015, I left my corporate job. I was making about $55,000 a year. So I left that job. Just stupid decision, but I left that job to become a personal trainer, right? Because I hated the corporate job. I was like, I'm done with this. I want to do something I'm passionate about, which was health and fitness. So I left that job in 2015 and became a personal trainer. and just starting off, I was being independent, so I didn't really have that many clients, but I had the savings to get me through it. And in 2016, I also became a kickbox instructor, and I was making $15 an hour, right? So I was making only $15 an hour. So it got to a point where I went from $55,000 to making $15 an hour, and it was hard to keep up with my bills, especially with the credit cards and personal loans. It was hard to keep up with that, so it was hard for me to save and figure out a way to get out my situation. Then in 2016, I read this book called Cash Flow Quadrant, and I remember a part in the book where I think Robert Kiyosaki, who's the author of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, he was getting to a point where he's like, you should develop this habit of paying yourself first. And I didn't really understand it, but what he meant was like when he gets his money, he pays himself first, and then he'll pay his bills after that, even if he's not unable to cover it. And I remember his accountant was saying, it was like, you don't have enough to cover the bills. And Robert Kiyosaki was like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna pay myself first, and then whatever I have, we'll just use that to pay the bills. And in my mind, I was like, you can't do that. But you know what? I said to myself, let me try it. So every time I got a paycheck from my kickboxing job, I would put some money aside to pay myself first, and then whatever was left, I would pay my bills. And I didn't cover all my bills, all my credit card payments, but I was like, you know what? I got into the habit. And I was like, all right, it's not that bad. Maybe some bills aren't paid, but you know what? I mean, I'm still here. Like, it's not it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like, I wasn't hurt. My credit probably got hit a little bit, but I was like, you know what? All right, this is not a bad idea. And I did that for a couple months, and then it got to a point where, like, you know what? Why not just pay none of my bills? And I'm not recommending anyone do this. It's a stupid thing, but it was something I did. I was like, you know what? Why pay any of my bills? I'm gonna just take all the money, save it, and then not paying any of my bills. And during that same time as 2016, I also started an affiliate marketing, an online business, affiliate marketing. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to pay my bills until I start making money. And once I start making money, I'll pay the bills, right? Not the smartest thing to do, and I wouldn't recommend you do it, but that was the decision I made, right? I made choices. Life is about choices. I made that choice. But the point is that I had to get to a point where I had to control my spending, right? I cut all my expenses. So also I forgot to say, in 2015, I also got rid of my car lease, right? Which was like $400. So 2014, I sold my condo and I moved in with my parents. 2015, I got rid of my car and I was using my father's car, right? And then 2016, I started an online business. I stopped paying my credit card bills, and I got to a point where the only bills I was paying was a $26 membership and my $100 student loan, right? So I cut down all these expenses, and I made a lot of sacrifices to get back on track with my spending. And the point I'm trying to make is, like, you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. You're gonna have to make a lot of cuts. Like, let's say if you're in your housing situation, maybe instead of wherever you're living, maybe you have to move in with your parents, or maybe you have to get some roommates to help you to mitigate the cost, like to help subsidize your costs. You might have to do that. When it comes to food, eating out, stop eating out. You might have to start cooking your meals at home, right? That saves a lot of money. People spend so much money when it comes to food. When it comes to transportation, you might have to downgrade whatever car you're dealing with and to a more economical car, or something that you can pay in cash. And because, like, car payments nowadays are like what, $600 now. At the time for me, it was $400, and I think now it's like $600 on average. So it's a lot of money. So you're gonna have to make a lot of sacrifices when it comes to your housing, your food, and your transportation. So whatever things you can do to cut costs, you're going to have to do that. So that was just my situation. And the good thing about this is, like, once you're going through that pain of living with a roommate, or moving back with your parents, which is a lot of pain. Nobody wants to do that. But once you're dealing with that, this leads up to my next point, which is let that motivate you to take action, right? Because obviously having to live with somebody, having to, like, not enjoy the going out and eating out with friends, or not having a nice car that you want, that's a lot of pain. But that should motivate you to say, you know what? I need to take action. I need to change my life. I need to make some moves in order to improve my lifestyle. So, because we all want a better life for ourselves. So going through this pain pushes you to say, you know what? I need to take action. And that's a good thing, because that's going to motivate you to want to do something. A lot of people, when it comes to their lives, they don't take action because there's no motivation. Like, they know their life, they need to be better, but they're not going through that pain of saying, you know what? I need to make it better. So the action that you're going to need to take is, you're going to have to increase your income. And for me, when I was going through my situation, I told you I started the online business back in 2016. I said, you know what? until I start making money from this business, I'm not going to worry about these bills. And it wasn't until 2018 where I started making, the money started rolling in, and I was able to pay off all my credit card debt. I was able to pay off my student loan debt. That same year, I was able to buy a car. It wasn't the best car. It was like a 2015 Nissan, but I was able to pay that $10,000 cash, right? And I was able to move into my apartment. So there was a lot of changes that I made to help improve my situation, and that's what pushed me. Like being in my parents' house, working on my online business wasn't the best situation. I was in the living room, my bed was in there. It wasn't the best living situation, but it was some sacrifice I had to make in order to improve my life, and I was willing to make those sacrifices. I couldn't go out, hang out with friends the way I wanted to, but I was like, in order to change my life, I'm gonna have to make some changes. So starting that online business, whatever you got to do, like to increase income, whether it's you do extra shifts at your job, whether work overtime, get a side hustle, get a side gig, start a business, whatever you got to do to make some extra income so you can then increase the amount of money that you save, you're going to have to do it, because obviously your situation right now is not cutting it, right? The money that you're making is not cutting it. You're gonna have to increase that income or reduce your expenses to the bare minimum. But obviously, it's hard to do that if depending on your situation. So you're gonna have to increase your income, right? Get better with your spending and increase your income. And once you start doing that, you increase your income. Then you can start focusing on things like an emergency fund, right? Where a lot of people are struggling to, save like $1,000. Like I think the majority of Americans don't even have $1,000 in the emergency fund, right? So you want to also focus on that. And then once you've done that, then you can get to a point where you're investing, right? Because once you start making more money, you don't want to just focus on active income. You need to figure out how to multiply that money, and that's putting it in the way you do that is by putting it into income generating assets like real estate or stock market, right? Because you want to multiply that money. Take that money, if you increase your income, take whatever after all you figured out all your spending, like your housing, all those costs, take whatever's left and you want to put that into income generating assets, whether it's a high yield savings account, a real estate, stocks and bonds. You want to start multiplying that money. You want to start making that money work for you. And this is how the wealthy people do it. They make that money work for them instead of working for their money at all times. So obviously, while you're working, making money, you want to start putting money aside and start putting it into income generating assets. And once you get to that point, then you'll see your situation improve, right? And then you don't have to get to a point where you're like, you're still trying to save money on low income. You're increasing that income and you're putting yourself in a better financial situation. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys found this information helpful. If you got any comments or questions, make sure to leave it down below. Hit the like button and share. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe, right? So you guys take care and have a good one. Later.